I talk about this in peer support and the importance of it. If they knew better, they'd do better.
Correct.
Like, you're basically getting mad at blind people because they can't see, deaf people because they can't hear. It's like they can't. They just can't. They can't see it. They can't hear it. Why get mad at them? Just acknowledge they can't see it. They can't hear it. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. I said that to my mom, and then I made it a little bit simpler for her. I said, Mom, cast iron frying pan on the stove. You forget that the handle's hot. You grab it. It burns your hand. Do you hang on to it, or do you let go? Mm-hmm. Well, you let go. Why? Well, otherwise it hurts.
Yeah.
Hello, friends. I'm proud to give a shout out to our sponsor, the Canadian Legacy Project. Veterans Affairs Canada is very limited in its service offering to veterans, so the Canadian Legacy Project has stepped up to fill the gap. CLP develops and delivers a full suite of free programs for Canadian veterans. CLP celebrates our veterans by offering meaningful support for healing and the transition to civilian life. Homes for Heroes, Business Boot Camp, service dogs, educational bursaries, equine therapy, and more are available through the Canadian Legacy Project. Find out more at canadianlegacy.org.
Hello, all you beautiful souls. Thanks for joining me for a special edition of Operation Tango Romeo, the trauma recovery podcast for veterans, first responders, and their families. As you probably know, the mission is to save lives and relieve pain by making help for PTS injuries easily accessible, with a vision of a world where the path to recovery is clear. So part of that mission and vision is me going around the world to try to find the better mousetrap. Every healing modality that I can find, every practitioner from everywhere. The majority of them have scientific data to back it up. Not always. Sometimes it's anecdotal, which is good enough for me. If it works, it works. I just got to know what's out there, because today's anecdote is tomorrow's science. Who knows? Today, I've been hearing about this dude for a while, and including from some well-known friends of mine, and I'm so happy to have somebody that's got another mousetrap, a better mousetrap on the show today, and I'm going into it blind, so I don't know jack squat about it, except that he's got a great reputation. Ernie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark. It's great to be here.
Well, I am just as curious as can be, so how about we start with, how did you get to where you are today with the work that you do?
Okay, so first of all, passionate about leadership was the first thing that kind of got my bug. And to make a long story short, 1997, started doing leadership for our local SWAT team. And while I'm working with the police department, I worked with the team for about 3 or 4 years. And after that, they've never had a police chaplain. So they asked me if I'd be their first police chaplain, 128-year-old service. And of course, I said, absolutely, love to do it. And so they sent me on a conference down in California. 1,000 chaplains arrive in California for a week of training. And the keynote speaker gets up and says, did you realize that every day in North America, a police officer takes their life? And of course, right at that point, it kind of stopped me in my tracks, saying, I did not know that. So we're talking 25 years ago. And so one of the things that's my most valuable degree is I have an engineering degree. And so engineers solve problems. And so I began to do the research, deep dive on why are officers taking their lives. So for the next 5 years, from 2001 to 2006, I studied the history of medicine, psychology, psychiatry, and 94% of the world's religions, looking for a solution to trauma, and dead end. So after 6 years, dead end, couldn't find a solution. And because engineering's a science, I said there has to be a science to solve this. And so my thesis was, I believe that we were designed to handle trauma. Then what are the elements required to solve trauma? If I'm building a bridge as an engineer, I have to consider all the perils that are going to affect the bridge. I've got to think about the design, the load. And so we can make the analogy that trauma is a peril to all of us, and it's imminent to all of us. So then I considered looking at, okay, how do we how are we designed to solve trauma? And so, just to make it short, we each have a soul, we each have a brain and a body. And that was kind of the triad element that I looked at. So the thesis in 2001 was we have to be designed to handle it. So I'm going to find out how. So that was kind of my initial entry into this. And now it's been 30 years of perfecting that. So by 2006, I actually had a model, Mark, that actually resolved trauma. And it was coming from that 6 years of research.
So walk me through it.
Okay. So when it came down to, I think it's probably interesting for people to understand the history of the current modalities or the current disciplines that are addressing trauma. So
Well,
this to me was
let me participate there.
sure.
When I testified in Ottawa, I told them numbers that they really didn't want to hear, which is the efficacy rate of the OSI clinics, which is what is provided for us, operational stress injury clinics. So that's where a veteran goes. That's provided by the government. Here, go to the OSI clinic. They'll fix you up, except that they don't. Their own numbers have efficacy rates between 12 and 16%. In the States, at the VA, it's the same thing. You go in the system and efficacy of 12 to 16%. And I have never even seen what they call success. So,
Right.
Maybe that 12 to 16% is still inflated. People tend to inflate, not deflate their success numbers. So the system doesn't work. It just doesn't. SSRIs, most people don't know, don't work beyond the placebo effect. Oh, but they worked for me. Not beyond placebo. A bag of Skittles would have done the same thing for you. So, and tasted better. So, anyway, Ernie, I just wanted to add that in. Get back to her. Sorry about that.
Well, no, I 100% validate what you just said, because that to me is the question, right? So
have you found numbers, Mr. Engineer?
Correct. Yeah, correct.
What have you? Is it the same numbers you found?
Yeah, same. It's the same numbers.
12 to 16.
So 12, 16%. And that's the reason why we have to resolve the problem. So for me, that was kind of the impetus. And so one thing I said, so I had the privilege of being, I think I shared with you before about testifying in Ottawa too. So I was on November 18th, just this past November. And when I went there to talk about the whole trauma issue, I kind of opened up with a couple of comments. And one was, first and foremost, I have also a master's in psychology. I'm a clinical traumatologist, which means I can run trauma sites. So if there's a bus crash like the Humboldt Broncos, like I actually phoned up there and said, hey, I can actually help you with that site, because of what happened. It was only 5 hours from me, but they never got the call just because who's Ernie Wouters? We haven't heard of him. And so, but that's the level of training that I've gone on to get because I need to know. Like I had to go get my master's because I want to know what the institution's teaching or not. And this was 2020, I graduated, Mark. So 6 years ago, I'm in my master's program. Not a single class on trauma, not a single class on the soul, not a single class on forgiveness. And those are the three things required to actually release trauma. So been there and needed to understand, because why is it not working? It's because the institutions themselves don't have an answer. Psychiatry does not have an answer. And these are my friends and they're my peers. So my comments are coming from an engineering analytical standpoint. It has nothing to do with their heart and their contribution, to try and help people. But I'm looking at it, if it's not working, then we need to figure out why. And so that's kind of where the background took me. And in that process, if I had a whiteboard here, I would say, Mark, let me draw 4 triangles out. So if I drew the 4 triangles on the board, again, going back to science, and I can back up all the science questions you would like, but let's just go with, most people have heard of a fire triangle. So you need oxygen, so O2, you need a combustible, and you need an ignition source. So there's the triad with the oxygen at the top. So if you want to stop the fire, I just have to remove one of the 3. Now, fire is very productive. We need it to heat our homes. We need it to cook our food. So fire is a positive force, but it can be destructive. But in this illustration, what I want you to answer is when you look at the medical profession, so I've studied that history, psychology, I've studied that history, and I've also studied psychiatry. And then I'll go to one further, is worldviews or theology. So when you look at the triad, everything's a triad. I'm using the fire triangle as one example. But in my situation, the three things that we have to solve trauma is the soul. And most people, so 75% of the people believe in a soul, but only 5%.
For the atheists out there, Ernie, can we, what I try to do is reach across, like for people that are automatically going to turn their brain off as soon as you say the word soul, which is unfortunate. How could an atheist look at it? Just call it the mind, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, no, and great point, Mark. So this approach is universal, right? So I've actually taken into account the atheists, the agnostics, because if you have a solution, it has to be a solution for everybody. So the word,
exactly, yeah, that's my point.
Yeah, so the word I would use is consciousness. So
well
soul or consciousness. So that's the same thing. So if I use consciousness, then what is the three elements of that? So your mind, your emotions, and free will.
Mm-hmm.
So that's consciousness. A lot of people refer to that as the soul. And so that's the thinker and the program. So I'll put at the top of the triangle, I'll put consciousness, okay? Or soul, / bottom left-hand corner, I'll put the brain. And then the bottom right, I'll put the body. So if you look at the analogy of fire, I need those three elements to have a fire. So now what I'm saying is in order to solve a trauma, I need to address the soul, the brain, and the body. So the sequence goes like this. A lot of materialists in the medical field, neuroscience field, believe that the mind and the brain are the same thing, and they are not.
No, they're definitely not.
Yeah. So they're not. So then what they're thinking or what they're doing is they're trying to address the brain, and the brain is just an organ. So the best way I can give the illustration of a brain is it's like a transistor radio. It can send messages, it can receive. So in this story, the soul is the leader. It's the one that makes the decision or not. And so when the trauma happens, it's actually a soul wound. So Gabor Mate talks about the soul a lot in his books. Have you heard of Gabor? I'm sure you've heard of Gabor Mate.
Yes, I'd love to get Gabor on.
Yeah, he's got excellent material, but the issue at the end with Gabor stuff is that he doesn't address the soul. He talks about it's a soul wound, but they don't operationalize the soul. Same with Bessel van der Kolk, the body keeps score, and I would say so does the brain, and so does the body, and so does the soul. So all three of them are keeping score. So the symptoms is 1/3 of the problem. There's 2/3 missing. So if I go back to my initial point I want to make here, Mark, is that let's put those 4 triangles back up. And I'll just ask you, let's go to the medical doctor. Again, they're my friends. They have a purpose. But when you look at the soul at the top, the brain bottom left, and the body on the right, which of those 3 is the medical doctor actually addressing?
Just the body.
Body. Okay, correct. That's 1 out of 3. Let's go to the psychology. Which of the 3 is psychology addressing?
Well, break down psychology.
Yeah, sorry?
It's the body and everything. Everything's the body for them, right?
Well, actually, like they try to focus on the brain. So it's cognitive behavioral. So brain. Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay, you can look at it that way. But I'm looking in this triad to say in which of the 3 are they primarily focusing on. So they're looking really at the brain. Psychology.
Then I'll just call it the physical.
Yeah.
Physiology.
So psychiatry, which of the 3 are they focusing on?
Same.
Yeah. So the brain, really. And then I go to worldview, and it's the soul, right? So, but they're only addressing about 1/8 of the soul. Because when you look at, again, I've studied 94% of the worldviews, they don't address the soul really. They talk about it, they don't operationalize it. And so therefore they don't really know or have a solution for trauma either. So if I take these,
one of my favorite people, Jessika Vanderhook, she does equine assisted therapy, and she's
yes,
wonderful at it. She calls it a injury of the soul, and because it isn't treated or understood as an injury of the soul, that's why people miss the mark. So,
correct.
how do you describe an injury of the soul? Like, how would you unpack that?
Yeah. So the way I unpacked it is when you look at each individual, so I'll look at trauma in general, is that the trauma is an offense. So then that offense is actually a wound to the soul. So what is it actually ultimately attacking is your sense of value and self-worth. So what happens is betrayal. These are offenses if I were to list them. Being rejected, abandoned, your so the wound is actually those are the top three. So if I take any trauma that I'm working with, ultimately it's going to be in that area of offense. It could be other things like you stole my childhood. So if there was a sexual abuse, then that child lost their childhood, right? If it was
Well, that's in
physical,
line with what Dr. Jordan Peterson talks about. It's And I would disagree that that's all of it. What you're talking about is moral injury, or that's the label that people are giving it nowadays. Um, PTSD is a neurological injury, so it's encoded in fear. And I don't think that I think they're related, and the symptoms are the same. I don't think they're the same thing. When your nervous system is hijacked, the amygdala gets stuck on full blast, and the foot never comes off the throttle. That is classical PTSD, better named PTSI, because it is an actual neurological injury. That's why the hypervigilance can last for years and years, because the throttle gets stuck on full. And that can also happen because of moral injury, which is what you're talking about. But it's big events happen. You've got shot at too many times, too many car wrecks, whatever it is. But either way, the same thing that makes you sit with your back against the wall in a restaurant or has you doing threat analysis all the time and looking for weapons of opportunity, that's because your nervous system got hijacked and the throttle got stuck on full. So do you address that as well?
100%. So if I was to help you like visualize this, going back to the triad, is the soul is ultimately where the wound goes. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
so when you look at the brain, so the brain's very sequential. So you've got if I had a funnel and you looked at brainstem at the bottom, and then you've got your autonomic nervous system, then you've got your limbic system, and then you've got your prefrontal cortex. So it works in a sequence. And so what happens in every diagnosis that you talk about, so whether it's bipolar, PTSD, like anything from a mental health standpoint, is here's the reason why you get hijacked. So when you look at the brain, you and I, and actually everybody on the planet, the level of training that we've got when it comes to trauma is our ability to cross the road. So when you were 3 years old, mom and dad took you to the sidewalk and said, "Hey, Mark, I'm going to show you today how to cross this intersection safely." They put a pumpkin on the road. They let a truck drive over it and say, "Son, I want you to pay attention that could be you if you don't be careful when you come to the edge of the street here." So dad or mom is appealing to your mind. They just appealed to your emotions when they saw the pumpkin get squashed, and then their free will said, "I want you to look both ways, son. Once it's clear, then you can cross." So I call this the acute on-off trauma. Everybody's got that training, but guess what? That's all the training that we get. So let me address the PTSD component. Okay, so when you look at the fight, flight, freeze response, this is now the somatic therapy. I'm trained in Peter Levine's stuff. It's good stuff, but it's still not addressing the soul wound. And you'll see that I'm going to come back there every time, because even when I'm dealing with friends of yours that I've worked with in Afghanistan, Rwanda, like here's the interesting point is that I never solve the trauma. That's not the trauma I solve as a rep. I have to go back into their developmental childhood and experiences and solve the trauma before the trauma. Because what happens is we by default have to survive that traumatic experience. And we develop what I call default survival tactics. So in the fight, flight, freeze response, you have to get back to rest. So if you think of the bottom layer as green and you look at, I'm at rest, I'm at peace, my body will heal, I'm mindful, I'm present, there's joy. That's the low level. The next level, when trauma hits, is your fight, flight, freeze response. So on the fight side, we start with, first of all, there's a frustration with Mark. And if we don't answer that question, it goes to irritation. And if we don't answer that question, it goes to rage. And then we fight. And so we pretty quickly get out of the fight response as being healthy when it comes to complex trauma. On the left-hand side, I've got flight response. How does that start? Worry, no answer, it turns to anxiety, no answer, it turns to panic, no answer, goes to fear, then I run. But fight and flight doesn't solve that complex trauma. So then it takes you into the blue zone. So now at the blue zone, I enter there, I feel helpless, then I get depressed, then I want to numb, I want to dissociate. Now I'm frozen, I'm stuck. So up here, no answers to those questions, which you can just follow the sequence. Now we go to the plus plus disorders. This is where physical illness and disease, all the mental illness, this is where PTSD sits, okay? So PTSD is actually a lower brain problem. Yes, it will be neurological, but the reason that you're stuck there is because you've never been trained on how to solve complex trauma, which is what you're explaining. So what I do is I help people recognize. So in therapy, they talk about the executive function. We got to get to the executive function, which really lies in the soul. But the way naturalists or materialists think is it's in the brain. It's actually not. This is why they can never gain there. So those efficacies of 10%, they'll never get to the therapeutic window, it's called, because therapeutic window is only accessed through the soul. So if you leave the soul up,
it's because the brain doesn't create thought. It is it filters consciousness. It reduces consciousness.
It's taking the signal from the soul. So here's what happens, right? Is
it's a receiver, not a generator.
Correct. So then what's going on is, because your soul's not trained, so think about, you can only cross the street. So now give me a complex trauma. Well, complex trauma is anything relational, anything that has to do with abuse, anything that happens on the front lines, that's complex. So what happens is your soul doesn't know how to solve that because all you've been trained on is how to cross the street. So I actually can show, and I show this to my clients in the first 3 hours, I just do psycho ed. So I'm showing them what the people know about trauma, so knowledge. I show them the sequential brain. I show them the fight, flight, freeze response, the autonomic nervous system. And I show them how the soul's designed to lead the solution to all three of these, going back to the triad. So it's not that you don't want to solve PTSD, it's you don't know how. But it's not your fault, because guess what? Nobody really knows how to solve it. Now, here's the nut that I've cracked. I can resolve PTSD in 3 hours or less. 3 hours or less. And people say, I don't believe it. I said, well, come and see. So I'll give you an example. So I'm down in the US and I'm training 50 psychologists on this program. SEPTR it's called. So 7-edge program for trauma recovery and empowerment. I go down there and I'm working with the most traumatized people on the planet. So they're basically, you can go to prison or you can go this way and get treatment here. The reason I got called there is it was started by a psychiatrist who realized in the 80s that it doesn't work. Psychiatry wasn't working, and he's a psychiatrist. He's like, I do something different. So we designed this program to help people transition in these very traumatic environments to try and help them become whole.
Well, I just want to participate for a moment here.
Sure.
There's a video, I think it was 2009, could be a little bit off on that, but somebody was interviewing a bunch of psychiatrists outside of a psychiatrist convention in Vegas. And I don't know if it was Vegas, but outside of a convention, and asked a simple question: how many people have you cured? And they start to laugh, and like, one maybe, in 30 years. But most would say, well, there's really no cures in psychiatry. And most would say zero. And I thought that was absolutely fascinating. It's like, well, then how do you keep going as a profession if you've helped no people? And if the OSI clinic, who has both psychologists and psychiatrists, if their efficacy rate with self-reporting numbers is 12 to 16%, which is probably fluffed up, how do you keep going as a profession? And if anybody questions that, well, try to use AI, like use Grok or ChatGPT, and ask the question. Show me the proof. Show me the studies that shows the efficacy of psychiatry, and see what the old Grok has to say.
Yeah, and you're 100% accurate, Mark. So I've done that deep dive as well because I have to. Like, people need to know. And that's why when I use the illustration of the triangles and I draw it on the whiteboard at my clinic, is my clients are going, yeah, 1 out of 3, 1 out of 3. So here's the reality from a science perspective. Psychology and psychiatry, theology and medicine, like they cannot resolve trauma ever because they don't actually access the triune effect, which is the brain, body, and the soul. It's like you can never start a fire without oxygen, combustibles, and ignition source. So if you've got 1 out of 3, it's not scientifically possible to solve trauma.
So tell me what you consider resolved as. So define resolved trauma and what that looks like.
Yeah, okay. So when I have 3 evidence-based scientific assessments that everybody uses. So these are well established within the industry. So the Global Check Score measures 7 areas of mental health. So it's a screening tool. It takes about maybe 10 minutes to fill out. And the areas that it covers are depression, alcohol, substance abuse, PTSD, anxiety, dissociation, somatization, and suicide ideation. Those 7. It's a screen. It's on a scale of 140 points. A person does that, and it's their last 2 weeks. So if I gave it to Mark, I say, Mark, think about your last 2 weeks and do this assessment. So if your score is 70 or more, it means you're in serious psychological distress. That tells me where you are presently in those 7. Those 7 correspond to the freeze zone and the fight, flight, freeze zone. Okay, so I got fight, flight, freeze. All 7 of those, one's in anxiety, which is the red zone, fight or flight. The rest of them are in the freeze zone, which is where all illness and disease lives. Every diagnosis.
I just got to add one. It's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn.
And there's another one. So there's 2 that I haven't added. And sure. Because the body's design.
What's the other one? Fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and then what?
Facade. So I call it facade.
Oh,
yeah. And their mark is where you've got narcissism, borderline personality disorder, psychopaths. Like, it's a facade that they put on. But here's kind of the key thing, sure, is that the thing that's in common with fawning and with the facade is both of them have the same seeds, which is unresolved trauma as children. So they've had to, those are default survival tactics. The fawn and
my longtime audience already knows this, but for anybody listening for the first time, the U.S. military has done a wonderful job of keeping stats on every frickin' thing with everybody that joins. And what they have found is that there is a direct correlation that could easily be called causation for their members of the level of childhood trauma to the trades that they choose. So your ACEs score, which is your childhood trauma score, adverse child events, the higher the ACEs score, the more trauma-rich the environment which you choose to work in. It's the same with first responders, and they're the ones with the highest childhood trauma scores are the ones that go infantry. And and if you go to special forces, their childhood trauma scores are higher again. It's direct. It's very predictable. So When
100%.
I was a young infanteer, I knew that I had a pretty messed up childhood, but I was listening to some of the stories of the other guys. I go, oh, I guess it wasn't that bad by comparison. And so I just thought that was normal. I thought everybody grew up in an incredibly abusive environment, but that is not normal. It is what produces the warriors, though, because to survive, say, SEAL team training, to have that kind of grit, to be able to withstand the cold, the misery, the lack of sleep, the pain, the discomfort, well, you had to have been tempered at some point. So we had already been through the forge, which is
Correct.
why we were strong enough mentally to be able to endure the suffering, which is why right now Canada is looking at 300,000 civil servants to become soldiers. But it takes a lot more than putting on a uniform and picking up a rifle to become a soldier. Just looking the part doesn't do jack shit. In order to do it, I mean, you have to get hard. You have to get frickin' hard. And that doesn't happen just by putting on a uniform and picking up a rifle. It's a whole process. And if you're not pre-tempered before the training, you don't make the training. People never do. I started with 18 people in my battle school course, graduated with 5. And that used to be normal. 1/3 would pass. That was just how it was then. So kind of like the Navy SEALs now.
No, 100% correct. And you'll be interesting to note that ACE is one of the 3 assessments that I give them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
has to be.
Has to be. And so, and you'll also probably know this, but the average military personnel that goes into the Army has an ACE score of 6 or more, which means you already have PTSD before you don on the uniform.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's most, and it's trade specific. Like that is not true. If you go to the Air Force, it's a completely different vibe. Like you go to an Air Force base, like even as a civilian, right? You go to an Air Force base, completely different vibe. Then you go on to an Army base, different vibe again, especially if you're hanging out with an infantry unit.
Correct. No, correct. And so this is where earlier I was talking about the trauma before the trauma. So you've already got trauma before you signed up. So you already have PTSD. And I told them in Ottawa as well, they've already got PTSD before they put the uniform on. So when it comes down to what's causing, so that we're actually speaking to the same committee, what causes suicide? Number 1, unresolved trauma. So I'm going to get to that point. You asked me about trauma and resolution. So I said to them these 5 things. Number 1, unresolved trauma. The current system, like psychiatry and psychology, do not declare anywhere in their documents that they have an answer. So I said to them, they don't, right? And so I said to them, again, with full respect, we're not attacking their value or their sense of self-worth at all. I'm strictly making these comments on a science level. And so the fact that they cannot do that, why are they leading the charge? So I said to the committee, they should not be leading the charge for resolving trauma when they don't have a solution. And so I do have a solution, right? So getting back to your question is, what do I mean by resolving trauma? So I take these 3 assessments. So I got global check, which is those 7 areas, the ACE score, which is those 10 areas. And then the third one is PCL5, which is actually PTSD specific. So once I've identified, because if I was to give a TED Talk, and I've been asked to do a TED Talk, I would open up my TED Talk with this comment. The majority of illness and disease, including mental illness, is the direct result of unresolved trauma. How do I know? 1,500 life stories, and this is my minimum number, Mark. I've sat down with individuals, got a 24-inch roll of paper, so 24 inches wide, 80 feet long. And I break it into 4 categories, but 3 curves. So my first one is your personal life. So I'd say, Mark, what year were you born? You say 1967. I said, okay, that's
I'm
the
not
start.
that old, Ernie, for God's sakes, 1970.
Okay, 1970.
Don't age me.
So 1970. So on this line up top, I've got your personal line, and it goes low, neutral, high in emotions. So now I've got your personal line. Then the middle, I've got worldview. What are your beliefs? The bottom one, I have education and vocation. So your education leads into your career. So I sit down with Mark and say, Mark, tell me your first childhood memory. It usually happens at home, but then sometimes it's other areas, but typically it's at home, and it's usually around age 3 or 4. So if it's 1973 would be Mark's first entry. And I'd say, was that a high event, Mark, or a low event, that first memory? And if it's high, I draw it above the line. And then I just listen to your whole story like a ticker tape up until present day. I do that for your worldview, and I do it for your education vocation. So I stop counting at 1,500 of these. They take me 10 hours each, and then 10 hours to solve the trauma. So I'm spending 20 hours. I stop counting at 1,500. So that's 30,000 hours just sitting with one person in my clinic, listening to their entire story. And I pretty much
what's the earliest memory that you've come across?
So somebody remembers being born.
Yeah. Well, I got memories from 6 weeks old, so that's why I ask.
Okay, yeah. Somebody remembers being born. I go, wow, okay. I put it on the map, right? So, but you can imagine going through this. So here's the facts. The average person has 15 to 45 unresolved traumatic events, all at different degrees of, trauma, but 45. I've had people with over 100, and I stopped counting, 100 traumas on their life story. Mm-hmm. So when you link the number of unresolved trauma to symptoms, the average person has 15 to 40 symptoms per trauma. So what categories? It's from the Federal Emergency Management Agency list of categories, and I've added a fifth category. They have 4. So physical, behavioral, cognitive, emotional, and I added worldview to it. Mm-hmm. So there's 82 symptoms on this list. So I've been tracking this since 2006. So I've got 20 years of data on just people's number of traumas, number of symptoms, and then I've linked them to illness and disease. So now I know what illness and disease is linked to what trauma. So lupus is unforgiveness. Fibromyalgia is
anger. I'm holding off because I didn't want to interrupt you, but fibromyalgia, I wanted to ask. I knew it was psychological.
Yeah. So actually all of them are, like all of them. And then I'm not the only author on this. So there was a great book in 2001 by Don Kohlberg, and it's called Deadly Emotions. This was written in 2003. So I'm doing this research. I'm starting in 2001. So I'm reading all of this material, and I'm linking what other experts are finding in their practices. So he's a medical doctor, didn't mention the word trauma in there once, but he's talking about all the illness and diseases that his people are coming because of unforgiveness. Mm-hmm. And so I just tracked them. I've got the whole list of them in there. So now you can see trauma leads to disease. So when I go back to my triad that we're talking about, brain, body, soul, is that the lower brain is where we're stuck. And sadly, psychology and psychiatry are also stuck there. And because they're stuck there, they cannot solve PTSD. They will never solve it. However, I can solve it in 3 hours. And I do this every week, multiple times. So I can give you 100 examples. I've got all the data. I've got literally hundreds and hundreds of files with all this data, Mark, that shows you. So when I went to the US, I proved it down there. I've proved it in Canada that I can take these illness and disease. So you've got PTSD. I'll walk you through the program. So this week you have it, next week you won't. Like by the time I solve the trauma, it's gone.
So I'm going to make a guess that anybody with addiction issues, their addiction is gone at the end of the 3 hours as well.
Correct. Like if their physiological problem is there, but I can help wean them off because once I help them understand the reason that they're numbing is an unresolved trauma in their soul. So we go back to that
That's what people
issue.
don't understand. People think that addiction is about the substance. No, the substance is the medicine that the unhealthy medicine that they're taking.
Correct.
If that's why they're taking the substance. You
Correct.
resolve the trauma, there's no desire
Correct.
for the
Correct.
substance.
100%. So I've had people, like alcohol's the worst to come off of. And so, but I've had people go cold turkey because we answered the question. So the reason they were numbing is because when he was 8 years old, his dad did something to him and he's been trying to block that hole ever since. So for me going back there and helping him resolve the trauma with his dad, all of a sudden, what happens in order for you to get out of the fight, flight, freeze response is I have to deactivate your autonomic nervous system. So there's nothing out there, no one so far, that knows how to deactivate the autonomic nervous system. I actually do. So what's required, and this is where the soul comes into play, is that if you think of somebody that's offended you, okay, just for a second, think about somebody in your mind that's offended you. Okay, you've got someone.
Oh, I'm actually doing this. I
Yeah.
don't get offended anymore.
Okay, so if I have an average person when it comes to
Yeah, most
trauma,
people do. Yeah,
yeah, so they're offended by something. Something's happened.
sure.
So, okay. So then on the soul, I actually operationalize it. So you've got your consciousness, if we call it consciousness, mind, emotions, free will. It's in a parallel line. On this side, the right hand side, I've got what influences the soul. Well, there's evil, deception, seven deadly sins. These are all general things that are out there. I can choose those. If I choose those, then my life will be despair, captivity, and premature death. That's where
Mm-hmm.
that'll be my community. On the left hand side, I've got good versus evil, truth versus deception, wisdom versus knowledge. I can also choose that. So my soul's up for grabs all the time.
Yeah.
But here's what's missing again. So I told you at my master's, not a single class on the soul, okay? Not a single class on forgiveness. So forgiveness is actually at the soul level. So because psychology and psychiatry don't address the issue, they're now missing the two most important pieces for your body to go to rest. So I got to shut your autonomic nervous system off. How do I do that? I need to release the trauma. So the entire globe, for the most part, has been misinformed on the word forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
They think forgiveness is about the offender. It's 100%
Yeah.
not. It's not.
Ernie, I talk about this all the time, and
Yeah.
people will freaking fight me on this. Um, and the only reason that they fight me is because two reasons. One, they just honestly don't understand what forgiveness actually is. They think that it's about letting somebody off the hook. It is not. They think
No,
it's saying that it's okay. It is not.
that's
It does
correct.
not absolve somebody of accountability or consequences.
Correct.
No, the offender still requires accountability and consequences up to and
Correct.
including jail or execution. Like
Correct.
that doesn't change when you forgive. And
Correct.
I just went through this with my mom, who she's 88 and change. And she, because a little bit of dementia in there as well, she can't do time. So stuff from 45 years ago could have been 3 months ago to her, right? Um, she still remembers a lot, but it gets twisted and jumbled up as far as the order, so she gets a little bit confused. But she's hanging on to some horrible stuff that happened to our family way back, like in the
Correct.
80s and in
Correct.
the early 80s. And the effect on her, I believe, is why she's wheelchair bound, why her arms don't work, why, it's all because of that not letting go. But
Correct.
I walked her through a little bit of gospel, actually, through my interpretation of two things I said to her about forgiveness. I believe that the crucifixion wasn't about absolution through substitution. I mean, that might be part of it, but I've never understood that. My tiny little brain believes that it was the example of the ultimate example of forgiveness, because the Son of God, somebody like a supernatural being, a deity who could have just waved his finger and slaughtered an army if he so chose, allowed himself to go through that process of the 39 slashes and then get pinned to a cross. I think all of it, because what he endured was like would have killed anybody else. I mean, just the fact that he got that cross up shows he's a deity, you know. But it's just about his second final words: "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." So, if the Son of God can forgive his tormentors after torturing him for hours and putting and spitting in his face and pinning him to a cross, if he can forgive those people under those circumstances, then anybody can forgive anyone for anything. If they knew
Correct.
better, they do better. I talk about this in peer support and the importance of it. If they knew better, they do better. These are just
Correct.
blind, like you're basically getting mad at blind people because they can't see, deaf people because they can't hear. It's like they can't, they just can't. They can't see it. They can't hear it. Why get mad at them? Just acknowledge they can't see it, they can't hear it. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. I said
Correct.
that to my mom, and then I made it a little bit simpler for her. I said, Mom, cast iron frying pan on the stove. You forget that the handle's hot. You grab it, it burns your hand. Do you hang on to it or do you let go?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you let go. Why? Well, otherwise it hurts. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So then I just used that. And then when she circled back, I go, Mom, frying pan, let go of the frying pan, Mom. Hanging on to the frying pan hurts you.
Yeah.
It doesn't, it doesn't hurt the frying pan. The thing that's hurting you is the frying pan. So let go of it. It's so simple like that.
Mm-hmm.
And but with those two examples combined, she was able to finally let go of stuff from the 80s. And
Fantastic.
she hasn't measured it since. But it's that awareness. It's the ability. That's why Christ spoke in parables, right?
Yep.
Because people learn through stories. And to me, that was the lesson of the crucifixion and the importance of that forgiveness. And if you don't do it, the physiological effects,
Correct.
Fibromyalgia, like you said,
Correct.
all digestive issues, headaches, chronic pain, all from a lack of forgiveness.
100%. You've just picked the number one example globally and in the world and in the history of the world. So in studying all the other 94% of the world religions, there is no second example other than Christ as the example to use. It's the example to use. Because in the Greek, most people don't know this, but the definition of forgiveness in the Greek means to let go, to no longer hold on to release. That's what it means.
Mm-hmm.
So you're 100% accurate that that's what Jesus modeled.
Well, it's a form of fear. Like not letting go is a form of fear. And that's the one phrase, Old Testament and New, but especially New Testament, that said again and again, some version of "be not afraid."
Yep.
And just let go of it. Don't be afraid, and don't be bitter. Don't be angry. It's a self-inflicted wound.
Correct. And this becomes the tipping point in the trauma release. So first of all, we need to have the soul present. And so what I do is when I have the person, and I've got these three parallel lines, so I've got the righteous judge on this side, the unrighteous judge on this side, and I've got the categories of deception, evil here, and then on this side it's, good, wisdom. So I use the issue of forgiveness, like with your mom. I'd say, ask her, say, do you think forgiveness is important? 99% of the people say yes. So at that point, I draw across from the mind. So I got mind, emotions, free will. Across from the mind, under the column of truth, I put yes. Then I say, well, do you feel like forgiving them? 99% of the people say no. So I draw a line from the yes through the heart, emotions, over to the right-hand side. And now I'm on the other side because of ignorance. But because I'm not aware of how to forgive, then now I've got a divided soul. My mind says yes, my heart says no. What's my free will going to say? Who's it going to follow, your head or your heart? Free will. Your heart. because anger has a 24-to-1 power over logic. So therefore, I've got 2/3 of your mom's soul or my client's soul sitting under ignorance, which means they're captive to the trauma because they don't know how to solve complex trauma. The soul doesn't know. And so therefore, every diagnosis, Mark, is also trapped. So PTSD, borderline personality, treatment resistant depression, general anxiety disorder will never ever get solved because you're stuck in the lower brain. So I go
When
back to
you're
my
when emotion is high, rationale is low. You can't if you are upset, if you are wildly angry, you cannot think logically. You do not have the
correct,
ability. Nobody does.
correct,
And that's what's used against us all the time in the news. And if you're all whooped up, you don't have the ability to think, no matter what your IQ.
correct. And this is where when I put this on the whiteboard, people are seeing now how the brain's impacted when it comes to trauma. The brain can only do what the soul knows. So if the soul doesn't know how to deal with complex trauma, it can actually send a signal to the brain to shut off the autonomic nervous system. So the autonomic nervous system stays on. So the accelerator's on. You immediately go to fight, flight, freeze. And guess where, sadly, medicine, psychology, and all of the current therapeutic messages are? Is they're actually keeping you within the fight, flight, freeze departments. So, for example, on the flight side, I've got anxiety. So it starts off with worry, anxiety. The person goes to their general practitioner. They say, "You have anxiety, Mark." What do they do? Do they answer the reason why you have anxiety, or what do? They give you a pill. Okay, where does the pill send you? Sends you to the blue zone, which is moving you actually towards death, not to the green zone, which is freedom. You don't go to rest. Your autonomic nervous system stays on. So the accelerator in your car is on the floor. They give me a pill, it numbs me, but the engine's still running full time. So this is why a person's body will actually wear out. If you've got an ACE score of 6 or more, 20 years off your life, because this never shuts off. So what I'm doing, and this is the answer to your earlier question, is I'm actually deactivating the autonomic nervous system. So everybody's in the blue zone. This is where all illness and disease is. This is where every diagnosis from psychiatry is, but you're still activated. So my job is to help them deactivate. And how do I do that? I help them release the trauma through forgiveness. And when that happens, I take the soul from being trapped, educate it to, just as you talked about the frying pan situation, I'm also giving them the ability to release the trauma. And when they release it, it means I've done two things, just like you did with your mom. First thing you had to check in the box, so think of the sequential brain. I've got prefrontal cortex, which is the cognitive part, receive the message. And then I've got the limbic system, which is your emotions. So I have to check two boxes. What was the reason that this event happened to your mom? So you explain that, and then you validate her emotions. Yes, mom, I know you have anger, bitterness, and resentment, but you got to let go of the pan. And when you did that, you checked the reason box, you checked and validated the emotional box. It is well with your soul. Your body goes automatically to rest.
She actually said the words, "Because I don't want to let go of the pan." She actually
Exactly.
said that to me. Yeah.
Yeah. And when she let it go, then she's sending a signal from her soul to the brain. I let it go. And it goes 10-4, and that lets the body go. So now your body goes back to rest. So this is the sequence. Soul sends the message, the brain receives it, it's well with my soul, and it takes on new meaning. It's well with my consciousness. My body goes to rest, it will heal automatically. So I've had people, Mark, fibromyalgia for 30 years, and I found out the trauma. So I have permission to tell these stories from all my clients because they want everybody else to be free. So this story goes back. She's 55 years old. She comes into my clinic. She's walking with the limp. Her shoulders are shrugged. She's in tremendous pain. It's fibromyalgia. She goes, Ernie, my clients, I usually book for 3 hours. They go, what are we going to do for 3 hours? This. We're going to do this. I'm going to keep answering your questions and answering your questions because I got to check the box. Reason, and I need to validate the emotion. So I'm doing this the whole time I'm with people. So she says, I could probably stay an hour. Well, she stayed for 3 hours. And the trauma that we solved very quickly, we got to when she was 3 years old, she goes out to the farm to visit her cousin with her parents. Little Alex, who's 4 years old, bites her, breaking the skin on both arms. She's
Ow.
bleeding. She goes to mom and dad and goes, Mom and Dad, look. Mom and Dad do nothing. So the little 3-year-old, right? So that's the wound. That's the wound to the soul, right? So I'm saying, okay, we need to forgive mom and dad. So just as I walked through that process of forgiveness, her soul was over, trapped under, I don't know how to forgive. I don't want to let go of the pan. So I have 4 steps that I can walk you through that are a sequence for every person. Again, Mark, this is universal. It's for all people, for all places. So it works for everybody. And I just basically say, while I'm doing the assessment, is I'm finding out what's your worldview so I don't offend you. I will speak your language for the whole time. So in this case, I helped her release that. She wept, and immediately she felt a release. While she's in my office, I'll actually see it. So she immediately goes to rest because I'm checking the 2 boxes. Reason, validating the emotion, your body automatically goes to rest. She comes back the next week. Her scores, so here's the validation. Her PTSD, so score, she was like, I think 76. All you need to be is 33 or higher. So she's at 76. Her symptoms chart, like for the global check, she was at, I think it was 98, 70 serious psychological distress. Then I do one more as a symptoms check. Based on this traumatic event being unresolved, how many symptoms do you have? We're going to count the cost. So she had something like 60 symptoms. There's only 82. By the next week, on average, each of those numbers drop by 60 to 80%. 60 to 80. This is my normal result. Every client. So you drop by 68%, you no longer meet the criteria of PTSD.
Now, when you do follow-ups, because I've seen, before I say this, do a precursor. So 7 years I've been doing this, and I've had all kinds of people with claims of silver bullets, right?
Yep.
And I'm not disparaging or challenging you. I'm just saying that I get it a lot, right?
100%.
And one in particular, 22-0, which seems to show some pretty good efficacy. I'd like to see their actual numbers and success rate. But a couple of them said, oh, it's 100%. It's 100% success rate. I'm like, I don't know about that. And then when I had somebody where it didn't work, because I was a practitioner as well, they're like, well, yeah, that happens sometimes. I said, well, what happened to the 100%? You didn't tell me that happens sometimes, because it did not work here. But yeah. I have seen through 22-0, which is a form of neuro-linguistic programming,
yeah,
I've seen people let go of traumatic events without reliving it, without re-traumatizing them. It's a process where you see everything from a safe distance, and then basically let go of it, and or turn down the volume on it, and so you go from a 10 to a 2, or we always shoot for 0, but does it stick? And so with the success that you've had, what's the longest follow-ups that like how old is this data? Like, do you got people from 5 years ago that are all saying, yeah, I'm still good?
Yeah, I've got people from 20 years ago. I run into people
still good.
Still good. Like the lady with fibromyalgia, I just ran into her like about 3 months ago at the grocery store. And she looked amazing. Like she looked like 10 years younger the next week, and now she's walking straight. Like she's walking straight up. And so I saw her about 3 months ago. I said, how's it going? She goes, amazing. Like she was bright. Her eyes were clear. Like you could just see the spark in her. I go, any relapse? 0. zero
Is
relapse.
there an emotional connection to sciatica?
Yes, but it's also a physiological problem, right?
Hmm.
It's also a
Hmm.
physiological problem. So the majority of like even like people have certain parts of their body that are more sensitive to trauma. Like people have gut problems, people have back pain,
Hmm.
like there's a lot of things associated with certain parts of body, and some people have certain weaknesses, right? So everybody's different. So it'll show up somehow. And so, yeah, every part's a little different, but when you add it up, like I have people that have skin rashes. I go, yeah, that's an unresolved issue. Like they'll have it for years and years because your body is trying to send a message. So I say to people, the symptoms, the only thing your brain and body can do is scream symptoms. The problem is we're not actually reading the signs of the symptoms. If we could actually pay attention to the symptoms and say, guess what? I've got a soul wound I got to solve. And then when the soul leads and you resolve that, then the brain follows and then the body follows. So the body's always at the end because it carries out the work. So if the soul's in distress, then the brain is in distress, which puts the body into distress. So then the body wants to go numb it, right? So that's where the alcohol comes in. That's where the THC comes in. Like all of those things are in the blue zone. So we talk about default survival tactics. In fairness to all your listeners, in fairness to all the people in the world, we have never offered the people an option. I'm now offering them an option. You don't have to go there. You can actually resolve it because you were designed actually to not only deal with complex trauma, but to thrive in the midst of it and to be a warrior instead of a worrier. So we're actually designed for this, Mark. And it makes
So
sense.
when you say resolved, because I still don't think we've come up with a good explanation or definition of resolved. What I'm hearing is, and from what I've seen, resolving a trauma means step one, understanding it,
Yep.
because we usually only understand one piece of it, and it's the victimized view of it.
Yep.
So, but to understand it on a deeper level, and then two, to let go of it.
Correct. Correct. And so and the way I would describe it is that when you think about a trauma, like with your mom, let's say, right? All she can think about is the offense. If she's looking in the mirror, all she can see is the offense and the offender. That's all she can see. So we feel justified to be angry about that. And that's legit. There's just one problem with that. We go back to holding the frying pan.
Yeah.
I need to let that go because anger leads to all things that are not healthy. That's why that's not you need to not hold on to it. So then think about that about a 10% view of the trauma. What I need them to have is a 360-degree view without being invasive. So my approach, non-invasive. They don't have to tell me about the trauma other than
Yeah,
we
that's
have to,
key.
yeah, non-invasive. So so to answer your question is by the time I'm helping them to release it, I'm giving them a 360-degree view of the event where they willingly release. So
So
now that
that's the awareness piece,
the awareness,
and
it's
then
the
forgiveness. So that it's
it's
really a two-step process if you break it down.
yeah. So if you look at the 5 steps I use, we have to identify the event. The first thing we have to do is I've got to find out the trauma that's holding Mark back. There's a root trauma that started this whole thing in the first place. I got to go find that. It takes me about 30 minutes. So by the time you do those 3 assessments and I listen to Mark, I will take the PCL5, and I'm sure you filled that out, right? The PTSD form. There's 20.
Can't remember.
Okay.
I call it the anal exam. They they stick a telescope up your ass to see what's going on. Over like the intake questions back in
Yep.
2017, more than 500 of them, which all just re-traumatizes you. It's
Right.
absolutely brutal. I was
It's
walking around like a zombie for 4 days after.
yeah. It does. It's not necessary. Like so, the A score is 10. The PCL 5 is 20 questions, and then the global check is 35. So I got 55. I've got 65 questions. It takes them about 15 to 20 minutes to fill it out. And then within 30 minutes, by me asking them a question. So I'll go back to the PCL 5, and on the rating, it goes from 1 to 4. Okay, when you're actually selecting how you feel based on the questions. So in order to have PTSD, you're going to have a lot of 3s and 4s. So I'll say, Mark, based on number 8 question, what event were you thinking about? And you'll say ABC. I go, what about 14? ABC again. What about number 13? ABC. I said, guess what trauma we should solve? ABC. Got it. So I go back there. Then I take you through 5 steps. So the 5 steps are, we've identified the traumatic event. You know the facts. I don't need to know them. Then I go to step 2. Step 2 identifies the mental block. This is where everybody's stuck. So everybody has at least 6 to 8 unanswered questions surrounding the event. They never get answered. So now you've got a mental block. So now let's go back to my sequential brain. Right at the top, I draw a red line through there and say, we'll never get through the mental block because we don't know the answers to these questions. Out of the questions pops the offense. I said, Mark, I want you to look at those 6 or 8 questions. You just gave me a hint of what is the offense that they've committed. So in this case, we'll use abandonment with my client with fibromyalgia. Okay, now we've got the offense. Now let's look at how have you come to react to that growing up. So now I take you on a little journey and I ask you 8 questions about the primary influencers in your life. And you have really 5. And I'm looking for, sadly, the negative influencers in your life because this is what you have to survive. So your developmental trauma is, I have to figure out how to survive these people. And the 3 people that I automatically put on the list are mom, dad, and peers. You don't get to pick any of them. They're going to get evaluated. And in their defense, they're trying their best. So I'm not looking to blame anybody. I'm just showing you, why does Mark react the way he does? Well, the first 17 years is an incubator, right? So when it comes to trauma, on the nurture versus nature, I'm 98% nurture, 2% maybe, and I'm being generous on the genetics. It's your environment. Yeah. So here I show you why you do what you do. I explain 60 things about Mark by you answering 10 questions, and evaluating these 5 influences. I call this the Private Ryan curse. This is what's driving your behavior and you don't even know it. And the message that comes out of that sequence is, you have to earn love. You shouldn't have to, but this is what drives you. I got to earn it. So in Private Ryan,
you never had it, so you're unworthy of it.
Correct.
Yeah.
So now I go to step 3. So now I know why you're reacting. I know what your unanswered questions are. Step 3 is, we have to count the cost. What's the cost of not solving this trauma? I mentioned this earlier. 5 areas. It's FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency symptoms. I've added 1 column. It's called worldview. And I've added a few others, but I got 82 symptoms. In there, I get you to say, Mark, based on this trauma, which of these symptoms do you currently have, to the best of your knowledge? If you're not sure and you have the symptom, check it. This is where I get the cost. We don't solve this, you got 50 symptoms that are activated. Mm-hmm. Step 4, trauma is an offense. What did you lose? So now I'm answering the question, but now we're going towards grieving, right? So again, I'm using consistent industry-based models that I've combined. So critical incident stress debriefings on the left. It's more logic. I'm trained in that. I've presented at their conferences in Baltimore, and I told them why it doesn't work.
You don't think CISDs work?
No.
Okay, so when you say don't work, like don't work well or don't work at all?
Well, basically what they're doing is it's a debriefing, which is fine, but you're actually not solving anything, right? So you're basically saying, okay, we need to do a debriefing, but you shouldn't debrief because the way that process is, you're actually triggering the people that weren't on the scene, right? So you should never do a debriefing in a group. Like what I do on the debriefings, critical incident stress debriefing, is I actually talk about this psychoeducation part, how does trauma affect you? I don't even talk about the event in the group. Then I do one-on-one stuff with the people that were actually on the site. So I did the triple murder in Medicine Hat in 2006. I debriefed those officers, but I did it privately because the group setting is you trigger the people that weren't there. So the 911 operator is now getting triggered with the kid that got 10 years old, and they got a 10-year-old sitting at home that got his neck slit. So CISD, I actually presented at their conference and told them why it's not enough. It's not enough. Because we send them to where? We send them to a place that doesn't know, right? That's where we now we're sending them into someplace else. And this is what got me going, is that they go to these other services, they drive 3 hours to Calgary, and they spend an hour, do a checklist, and come home with meds. I go, that's not going to work.
No, it sure doesn't. Are you familiar with the BOSS program?
Say again?
Are you familiar with the BOSS program, before operational stress?
No.
Guy that I actually went to junior high with is part of that. Ryan, it'll come to me. But the BOSS program out of Calgary has made strides. It's basically, well, it's prep. So it's resilience before the events happen. And there's CISD, I think, is also part of the overall program. It's been a while since I've had him on.
Yeah. So this is what I actually do is, so I worked with our Medicine Hat 911 Communication Center. So in 2003, I'm chaplain. I'm at the police station. I arrived there one morning and the manager from 911 is in her car and she's in tears. Ernie, I don't want to go in. I go, can I help? She goes, would you help? I said, of course I would. So long story short, I start working with the entire department. And of course, I took them through this program. So what we would do is I'd actually spend a day with each operator before they hit the floor, actually solving at their freedom of choice. They got to choose. We can actually do your life map, which I talked about earlier. So we can take your whole story down. We'll solve 2 traumas using these 5 steps. Or you can pick 2 of the most frightening calls you're anticipating and getting, and we'll walk through the 5 steps so that you can not get triggered by that trauma. Or you can have 2 fictitious things that you come up with family or friends. But you're going to spend a whole day resolving trauma. So it's actually bringing the entire being together. So your mind, emotions, your free will, the 5 areas, so physical, behavioral, emotional, cognitive, worldview, all of this that gets triggered gets resolved. So that's where you're releasing the frying pan at the end, which means your autonomic nervous system shutting off. So what I'm training them to do is to pay attention to your body and your brain and your soul, what's happening. You've got 5 steps to walk it through. And I'm giving them a framework, which is a worldview context that helps them at any moment to see where they are. Are you stuck in the soul? Are you stuck in the lower brain? Are you stuck in fight, flight, freeze mode? And I give them the steps to actually release it because now they know. So this is the preventative side. All emergency services should do this. And I've worked with every emergency services sector with the exception of Coast Guard on this. But it should be, like you say, training before deployment. This is what we should be doing in the military. Solve the trauma before they go into the field. Now I've got the goods. So I don't know if I mentioned to you, but I was asked to go to the Ukraine in July of 23. And
Okay.
the Ukrainian ambassador said, I do not want a psychiatrist or a psychologist. So we need somebody else that can solve trauma. So I got selected from Canada to go.
That's fantastic.
So now I'm in the Ukraine. I'm actually on the front with the chaplains because I'm a former chaplain. They go, Ernie, you want this training? Then I met with the national.
Have you ever worked with any special forces units?
Yes. Joint Task Force 2 Canada, right? And I've worked with, I've had people that have been in special forces, right? So just like previously. So they're not there
so
now.
Like officially, like JTF had you over and said, no, just with their people.
They were a part, they were on the team. And so then what happened was, because I worked with 911, they ended up being a member that was working in the city of Medicine Hat. And because I worked with 911, that manager's Rhonda Grant, amazing leader, by the way. She said, you need to go see Ernie. And so I spent a day with him solving his childhood trauma. So his situation was he got raped when he was 12 by a man. So it had nothing to do with his special forces trauma. And this is kind of what's interesting is I often say when I'm working with military, so I've worked with, I don't know, probably 35 military personnel now. And I often say to them, I will help you solve Afghanistan and Iraq, but honestly, the trauma I really need to solve is the trauma before the trauma. So we go back into their developmental stuff. We solve that. And then all the dominoes fall, Mark. Because once you solve a trauma, I don't have to go solve 45. I just have to solve one. And as soon as I solve one, the dominoes fall.
The 22-0 that I talked about, that's what they do. They find the original. So they break it down into, they have two different paths, and we do both paths. But we start with the emotions, let's say betrayal. Okay, when's the very first time you ever felt betrayed? What's the earliest possible memory of betrayal? So you start as early as possible, and then we release it at that time, and then go through the entire timeline of your life for that particular emotion. And then we go through the next one, anger, and then we go through the next one and the next one. I think there's 8, and go through them all. And there has been some really good efficacy. Like I've seen it work. A friend of mine who had some really severe symptoms, I had him go through it, and what he was able to let go of was unbelievable.
Yeah.
He once walked into the garage to see his father had just shot himself in the face. And he was able to let go of that, which is something else. Something else. I was able to help him to a certain degree, but then the people that are more practiced at 22-0 got him through the rest. But it was the same kind of philosophy, though. Is find the very earliest. It's not the event; it's what the event means to you. Like, does this event land as betrayal or hate or anger? I mean, what is the emotion attached to the event? Yeah. And then you go to the first time you felt that emotion and work your way forward. It's and that is not something that really happens in a psychologist's office. I haven't found.
No, they don't have the time. They got 45 minutes, right? So they just don't spend the time. But in fairness to them, they also don't have the approach, right? So
no,
there's currently 700 psychotherapies on the market, Mark, right now. So you could go to 2 a day, never get the same approach. And that's when I was going through my master's program. I go, that's crazy. There should be 5 steps.
A good example, my friend Theo Fleury, he has spent 10,000 hours or over $1 million on every therapy he could find under the sun. Still not there.
Yeah.
And that's after however many decades and over $1 million. So if Theo can't do it, like what hope is there for the rest of us? And that's why the show exists, right? I've been going around the world for the last 7 years looking for better mousetraps. Yeah. And everything that I've heard from you is in alignment with what I've learned over the last 7 years.
Correct. And I actually was on another podcast and they said, you should talk to Theron Fleury. I said, I'd love to talk to Theron Fleury. I actually sent him an email, say, hey, Theron, I think I can help you. You know, same with Clara Hughes, same with Michael Phelps. Like, they're suffering with depression. Depression is actually not a mental illness. Depression is actually an emotional frame of reference, present day. So let me explain. There's 10 emotional needs that every human being requires in order to feel safe. Approval, acceptance, attention, comfort, respect, support, security. You need those. Guess what trauma takes? Guess what trauma steals? That.
Mm-hmm.
So when your emotional needs are taken, guess what by default it affects is your sense of value and self-worth. So why are people taking their lives is because repeat trauma will continue to eat at your and steal your sense of value and self-worth to a point where you say, I'm not worth being here and I'm going to give up. And it's because they're trapped in the lower brain because the system feeds that pit. So I look at that and say, you can't catch fish in the Dead Sea. And that's where we're currently operating from. And that's why you're never going to get out of that cycle. So if you stay in the lower brain, death is imminent. So suicide in North America is up 60% since the 1950s. Why is that? Well, in the 1950s, the Sackler brothers in the US, three medical doctors, bought a pharmacy and a marketing agency. They were administering electric shock therapy to patients. They go, that's cruel. It is. But why don't we just feed them in pill form, heroin and opium in slow release pain? Well, that's now responsible for the opioid crisis that we're facing today, is they're keeping people in what I call the lower brain. They'll never solve the diagnosis. They're just numbing them. So
well,
when you look,
there's a lot of physiological, like a lot of people are talking about, and again, anybody that says this is 100% the solution, I'm like, probably not. There's probably some color to add to that, but people are talking about fermented foods now in the gut biome.
yep,
Yes,
yep.
that is definitely a part of it, but is a wrecked gut biome the cause or the effect? And I'm going to say it's the effect. And these feedback loops can work in both directions, like SSRIs do temporarily. So let's say you fix your gut biome. Okay, poof, your mental health is feeling better for a while, but it's the
Right.
mental health, I believe, that wrecks the gut biome, not the other way around.
Correct. No, because autonomic nervous system's activated.
Yeah.
If you don't shut it off, it can even just send a signal. So for some people, it'll be the gut, right? So for me, 2006, I'm a leadership consultant, right? I've got a program called 7 Edge, and I've been building champions for 30 years. Well, guess what the weak link is for a leader? Lack of emotional intelligence or lack of ability to resolve trauma.
Sure.
So I've become an expert at that, which makes me an expert on the leadership front because it's an X factor when it comes to being able to lead, is I can actually solve trauma. So in this illustration, when you look at people stuck in the lower brain, you can't deal with conflict, right? You said it. You're stuck in fight, flight, freeze. So I look at that and say, if you have to use force, in other words, fire somebody, that's force, right? If I have to, like, I think of Theron, he's just trying to power into releasing this. So you can't do it, right? Because it's not a power thing. It's actually a soul resolution process.
Mm-hmm.
And so because they're stuck there, they can't see a way out. This is where I used to watch Bell Let's Talk, and I've stopped watching it because all they do is talk. I say, we got to do something. And that's why I'm writing the letters. Let's actually do.
Bell, let's do.
Yeah, let's do. And so I'd love to help Theron. You know, like there's trying to think of the guy that was with the Swift Current. You've probably heard of him. Swift Current Bronco bus crash. He came to town here. And when I watched the documentary because he was doing a screening. And he goes, Ernie, what do you think? I said, I think everybody in that video, that you yourself included, you're still caught in trauma. Like you haven't released it yet.
Yeah, my buddy Nathan has been on the show. He was there.
Yeah. So I said, I actually have a solution for that. I can actually help you resolve that trauma. Right. But they just don't think it's possible. I go, but it is possible because our design was in the initial place, considering the fact that Ernie and Mark's going to have trauma. God's going to design us with the capacity to resolve the trauma, and he has. And so so we talk about the silver bullet. I said this in Ottawa. People say they don't believe in a silver bullet. I said, I do. And I go, give me an example. I said, suicide. Suicide's a silver bullet. It's happening every 45 seconds globally. So if somebody was saying, I'm going to design how people should kill themselves, that we can globally, collectively get this down to 45 seconds, they've done it. So I'm saying if there's a silver bullet for suicide, can I not reverse engineer that and have a silver bullet to prevent it? Now, I can't prevent everybody from that, but I can. What if I save 80%, Mark? What if I can do that? And I've helped lots of people not pull the trigger.
So, in order to achieve that, you have to be able to scale. To scale, you have to have a process that's duplicatable. So,
Correct.
have you taught anybody else to do what you do?
Yes. Yeah. So I did
How
50.
many people?
What's that?
How many people are practicing the Ernie technique?
Yeah. So I would say right now I've probably trained about 85 people.
That's a lot.
Like, and this is over the last 15 years. And so, but my heart, Mark, is, again, this would be a God willing thing. 10 million people we should train, like God willing. Because
Well,
the
how about this, Ernie? I've done a lot of speaking gigs on these topics, and I've spoken to every fire chief in Central Alberta and South. Every single one of them have seen me on stage. And how about this? How about canvassing every fire station, start with the associations, and try to get it so that you have the same people that I had in the room. Let's say there's 500, all leaders within first responder world, fire and EMS. And you workshop them to get qualified to at least do some level of what you do. Like there has to be, just like there's a time and a place for first aid, and a first aider can handle it. But sometimes you need a paramedic, and then there's, let's say, 3 levels of paramedics, right? Well, if you're doing a big group thing like that, there must be a first aid version to stabilize the wound. So how about teaching that on scale and making sure that absolutely every detachment, every EMS shop has, every cop shop, all of them have 25% of their people trained in Ernie's version of mental health first aid.
Yes. Yeah. It's the dream, Mark. Like it's the dream for me. So
do you have a first aid package? Like, do you have a training course that can cover that? Trauma Empowered Revolution is your book.
Yeah. So this is actually the clinician guide manual. So this manual is I've already trained about like 50 psychologists in the States. And the goal is, right now I've got the book at the publisher. It's called The Soul Dilemma, and it's the missing link for resolving trauma. And then I've got 5 sciences. So the science, the structure, the strategy, the success, and then the spiritual, because the spiritual and science meet. So that's actually in the book, is about, here's the origin story of this. Here's all the barriers that I've come up against that I have to solve in order for that person to resolve the trauma. And then with it, I'm including a workbook. So the book will be both the workbook and the soul dilemma, where I have a step-by-step workbook that Mark works through on his own. And then there's a QR code at every significant point that I come up and do a video. So here's the sequential brain. Here is the autonomic nervous system. Here's the soul. And at every checkpoint, I'm doing a little video like we're doing right now, only I'm explaining what they're doing at every step. So I'm about probably 80% done the workbook. I hope to have it at the publisher, because now we're doing it together within the next month. So the dream is get it out to the world, and then people could actually, like retreat centers, the fire departments, could have a person that becomes the point person there and actually runs the program, because it's not complex. Like it meets all the criteria of a science. So there's 6 criteria of a science. Is it consistent? Is it observable? Is it natural? Can you test it? Can you predict it? And can you draw conclusions? So this meets all 6 criteria. Psychology meets 0 out of 6. Psychiatry meets 0 out of 6. And
it's not because we're beating up on them. It's just the truth. Like people go, the science, the science, the science. Well, where's the science? There isn't any.
there isn't
There is no empirical evidence whatsoever to show efficacy of any note for psychology, psychiatry. It doesn't exist.
It doesn't. It doesn't. In fact,
And yet people will spend 7 years getting their degrees for something that doesn't work.
well, and I went back
Or at
to
least
get
not
my
well.
yeah, I went back to get my master's. Why? I had a solution. Is because nobody will listen to me unless I have a master's level. They say you should go get your doctorate. I go, why? Why should I get my doctorate? Because they're not going to teach me like humbly and respectfully. The institutions don't know how to solve trauma, right? And I'm shocked that this is the case at this time in history, but then we're not shocked, right? Because this is what I've kind of expressed to the Commons Committee, is that you need a different leader because these don't lead anywhere. Like they end up at a dead end, but they sadly end up in the freeze zone. Like they're numbing the pain, which is not solving or resolving the trauma. So another way to answer your question about resolving trauma is just answer all the questions that Mark has, validate all of Mark's emotions. That's resolving it, because those are the 2 blocks in the brain. I've got unvalidated emotion, emotional block. I've got unanswered questions, mental block. You put those 2 blocks together, you're stuck in the lower brain. So guess what? There is no thinking taking place when it comes to your response to trauma. It's fight, flight, freeze. Fight, flight,
the medical
freeze.
industry just doesn't even know the basics. So I just got my family doctor last week. I've been without one for years. I don't really need one, but to deal with Veterans Affairs Canada, you just need one as a technicality. So I finally get one, and talking about medical history. So, well, in 2017, I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, more accurately a PTSI. And I said the challenge with that is that I am willing to bet that you're not aware that that's a neurological injury. And he looked at me like I had 3 freaking heads. Like the look of confusion on his face. It's an injury? Yes, it's a neurological injury. You can be seen in a PET scan. What? It can be seen in a PET scan? So he had absolutely no idea, nor did he understand the pathology. He didn't understand that a post-traumatic stress injury has effects on the body. It can wreck your digestive system, make you incontinent, hurt your back, like because of the constant anxiety, which is why you need to go for relief with massage and chiro, all because of PTSD. I swear to God, the look on his face, he was absolutely flummoxed. He was bamboozled. He had absolutely no clue, and that's not rare. One of the speaking gigs that I had, I was flown to Ottawa to speak in front of a room packed full of medical doctors, including surgeons. Not a one of them understood any of this stuff.
No, that's true. Like they currently and still currently don't have a single class in trauma. Like I said earlier, they don't have a single class in the soul, or forget, like not a single class. Like, so when you think about the general public is assuming and thinking they actually know something about the topic, they actually don't. So I actually treat psychiatrists, psychologists, both doctorates, medical doctors. I treat them. And your earlier comment earlier was one particular psychiatrist, like it was, I walked her through a trauma that she's been struggling for like 3 to 5 years.
It's why most of them follow this path. It's their own childhood trauma they're trying to sort out.
Correct. And so her husband comes home, because that's how I met her. And we solved it. He goes, "You solved it in 3 hours?" She goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Really? 3 hours?" And she said to me, she said, "Ernie, I don't help anybody. All day long, I see 8 people an hour. That's 48 people, like after, just by lunch, I'm sitting. And then, so maybe I'm seeing 60 to 575 people a day and I help nobody. They're 10-minute appointments. I just give them prescriptions. She goes, you should open up a clinic in California, because this was in California. I said, well, I live in Medicine Hat. I kind of like to live there, but so a lot of them confess to me that they feel like frauds. I go, well, in your defense, the institutions aren't training you, right? And in their defense, they don't know. So I'm not really blaming anybody because of the lack of knowledge or wisdom. Like you actually, like I shared this with you before, I'm probably at 60, 70,000 hours on this topic over the
Wow.
last 30 years.
Well,
Right.
I would say that the reason psychedelics have been, and we haven't mentioned psychedelics in this entire conversation, but the reason psychedelics work is because it is another path for doing what you do. The
Correct.
psychedelics show you the truth. They show you, okay, this is the trauma. This is actually the deal. And this is the pathology. This is, and tell me if I'm using the word pathology wrong. I don't think I am. But this is the path between this trauma and the malady and the dysfunction.
Correct.
That's the pathology. And so this is what's going on, awareness, and this is why it's still there, forgiveness. And psychedelics help people do that in a way that they cannot ignore, that it's in your face, you can't ignore it, and then you just decide. What the psychedelics can't do is integration. So the psychedelics, they show you, so they give you the awareness, but you still have to decide to integrate, which means, okay, what did I learn? Yes or no, I'm going to take these lessons and implement them into my life. That's integration. And it's you're doing the same thing without the ayahuasca.
100%. And I met, I think it was Gordon, is his first name. Do you know Gordon?
Gordon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was at Ottawa at the same time presenting.
Yes, I was there a couple days later.
Oh, okay. Okay. So him and I talked for about an hour after, and I was explaining to him what I do. Right. And he was going, I said, I can actually achieve that without the medication or the drugs. Right. He goes, really? He goes, well, that would be the preferred route. I said, well, we should work together. Like we should try and do this. Because I mean, you want to offer multiple paths for people that they have the autonomy. So I have 7 psychological essentials that is necessary for people to actually heal and recover from trauma. And one of them is autonomy. So you want to give people the freedom to pick.
So let's talk solutions here, Ernie.
Sure.
So you have a website.
I do, but I'd have to say it's not at all up to date where it could be. It should be. So this is
so maybe do that, and then on your website have a list of clinicians. Just like, hey, where's my Home Depot? Well, here's a list of locations, right? So do you have any list that you can share with people of where can I go?
Don't really at this point, but I think the point is that that's kind of the way we want to go, right? Is we want to move towards that, because those were private companies that I was training, right? So they're not really available to the public. Like they're working in their own trauma center, so they're not. So really.
I want to talk just like from a business perspective, right? Sure. So let's say, from the people in my network, I get you a dozen prominent clinicians that all want to learn and they all want to practice.
Yes.
The sell to them, other than like, oh, look, I can use this in my practice, is that, no, me, Ernie, I'm going to send you business, because people come to me, but they're not all coming to Medicine Hat. So where are you? You're in Ontario. Okay, where in Ontario is my list of qualified practitioners that can do this method? Correct. And so if they're coming to you first, and then you can funnel them business, and that's the incentive, the financial incentive for them coming to you. So that simple infrastructure I would put that on the top of my list, Ernie.
Yeah, 100%. No, it is there, right? And I think the what's the holdup kind of is, I feel like I have to have the book so that people can actually understand the story, but I need the workbook, because then that would be really helpful for them. So that would put them like immediately into service, because they're not going to be totally dependent upon Ernie if they've got all the QR codes for the videos,
They,
right?
they have to be zero dependent on you for it to be scalable, right?
Exactly. And so,
Scalable means that you do a train the trainer program,
yeah,
right? There's the trainer program, then the trainer program.
that's
So
right.
you can make other Ernies.
Correct. That's the goal,
Then,
Mark.
then it's scalable.
That's the goal. We're trying to scale. So I've already got the clinician's guide. Like right now, if you had 12 people, like 24 people, like we could do a week of training and people could walk away with that and then be able to put it into their practice. And we could certify them, like this is called Scepter. We could certify them Scepter certified, saying that they know how to use this modality because it's a therapeutic approach that's based on science, right? There's 44 outcomes, all science. So I just had the client this week, like he's been struggling, and I have several of them, but like this one here was his son took his life. So he's been struggling for a year and a half on that, right?
That is brutal. So is your work have to be one-on-one, or can you have 10 people in the room, 1,000?
So what I do right now, like River Valley
Resilience Retreat,
yeah.
Michelle
So
McKeveny.
yeah. So Michelle, I go there typically once a month. 4 veterans come there for the week, right? I do 3-hour sessions with each of them. So on one day I'm doing 12 hours. The next day I do another 12. So in 4 days I'm doing 48 hours with 4 different people. By the time they leave there, they've completely released the trauma and their numbers, like I told you, I get the same results all the time, 60 to 8% drop. They no longer have the criteria for PTSD. They go home. I get a new mommy. I get a new daddy. And so I've been doing that once a month almost for the last 2 years, right? With 4 different vets. And so,
well, if I hooked you up with the Veterans Association to do the same thing there with Homes for Heroes, to do that for all of the villagers, that's all stuff that you'd be down for.
100%. Like this is the goal. Like Mark, I'd love to just be training the trainers and just multiplying the number of servants out there to actually do this. And that's the goal, is to get 10 million would be awesome if, again, God willing on that piece. But I am setting this up so that everybody can get a chance to have access to it, because it's the greatest gift you can give a person, right? And totally, yeah.
How do people find you, get a hold of you?
So my email is ernie@7edge.ca. I guess they can go to the website. So it's also Ernie. You can use Scepter. So Scepter is SEPTRE.com or CA. And you can find my website. It's pretty good, but it just needs to get some.
Social media. Are you on Facebook and whatnot?
I'm not really on the social media side, which is probably another area that I've kind of been weak on just because, but it's something I'm going to have to improve for sure. So yeah, so scepter.com would be, so SEPTRE.com.
Or 7edge.ca.
7edge.ca.
Scepter.com, 7edge.ca. Ernie Wouters, Wouters. And any closing thoughts that we haven't mentioned that you need to?
Well, I think first of all, I appreciate everybody that's involved in this system, and want to say thank you for their service, right, to our country and to the people around them, like all emergency services. Like my heart on this going back 25 years was, here we have all these people in emergency services that are laying down their lives for others. My goal was to lay down my life for them, to say, I'm going to do what I can to help them be released. And even more so is to become trauma empowered, which is the revolution. So the revolution is saying everybody can be trauma empowered so that they can thrive in the midst of trauma, because we're designed to do it. So thank you for your service. I'm here to serve you. And I think together we can make a difference for all these people that have done such a great job at serving us. We need to help them.
Well, if you'll allow me, Ernie, I will help you build it.
Well, I'm 100% in, Mark. That's why I'm so excited to meet you and to be on the show, because I just feel totally aligned with what the purpose is. Like, this is what's missing. In fact, when I was in Ottawa, the whole purpose for me being there, like Kathy Wagenthal and Fraser Tomlin.
We just published yesterday. I had Kathy on the show. We just published the episode yesterday.
Yeah, yeah, it was excellent. Like, I listened to it. Like, and so Kathy, yeah, like it was good, right? And so Fraser's also on that committee. Do you know Fraser Tomley?
Yes.
Yeah. So Fraser's he told me he's a veteran that I worked with like 15 years ago. So he's a.
I didn't know he served.
What's that?
I didn't know that he served.
Yeah, Air Force.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's a big push behind this. Him and Kathy are a big push behind this program because, like, Fraser had me work with his entire office. Like, everybody's trauma empowered, right? And that's really like the elite part, is if you want to become trauma empowered so that you can lead people effectively. And
well,
so
that's one, and that's what I'm going to leave the audience with, Ernie. So if you know somebody that works in this space, and I'll be sending this once it publishes with everybody that works in this space, whether it be peer support, like my friend John Sr., or any kind of veteran support, where those institutions tend to fail is that the person offering the help isn't far enough down the healing process themselves, so they burn out.
Correct.
So the best place for you to start is all the influencers like me and like John Sr. and in all these places. Every veteran support organization that exists, the practitioners or the people working in that space or the peer supporters should go through your program first to sort themselves out so that they don't burn out.
100%.
And then from there, you have all these funnels created, because every one of us that's an influencer is a funnel, and all these funnels point at you.
Correct.
So that's the path, Ernie.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And you use the right terminology. So when I went down to the US to those trauma centers, I had to let the CEO know. I said, the traumatized cannot heal the traumatized. You just can't do it, right? Yeah. So we train all the leaders so that they're empowered and they can handle it, so that when you go into trauma, like, you're good to go, right? Like, you've got the confidence, but you've also got the freedom, you know, and there's like, honestly, no greater gift that you give a person than to serve them, right? And so when you see that autonomic nervous system shut off in front of you, greatest gift. Michelle says, Ernie, how do you do it? I said, I don't have to do it. I get to help these folks. He goes, you're going like 12, 14, 16 hours. I said, you know what? I would hope somebody would do that for me or my family. I would just hope that. So I'm glad to be here, but it's the greatest gift I can give these folks.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Ernie. And please once this episode publishes, embed it on your website. You can use it as the FAQs, and also helps your algorithms that you've been on a podcast, especially this one, right? This is probably the biggest one in the space. So
100%. Thank you, Mark.
So, thank you very much. Ernie, please stay on the line. If what you've heard today lands with you, please share this particular episode to spread the word, the good word of Ernie Wouters, with everybody you can think of, especially the leaders, the police chiefs, the fire chiefs. Share like the sugar bear, because sharing is caring. And let's help the word get out and get yourself through this program, and then learn how to put other people through it. And that is how we save the world. Thanks for coming out, everybody. God bless you.